How's it going, everyone? My name is Case, and today I'm going to be bringing you a video about the new BMW R18, which was released just today. It was supposed to be a live reveal at the Hand-Built show in Austin, Texas, but obviously that's not possible. Now, this is exciting because it's a new style of bike for BMW, and it's new in some ways and old in others because, as you can tell from the way that it looks, it's very old school in its design and looks a lot like some of the BMW bikes of the past.
Do you guys love trucks? If so, we've got a new podcast that will keep you entertained for hours, from on-road to off-road, from Raptors to Frontiers to Tacomas. Check out TFLtruck.com/podcast or go to wherever you get your favorite podcast, including Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Spotify.
The R18 is going to have the most powerful BMW Boxer engine of all time, and for that reason they're calling it the Big Boxer because it's 1,802 cc's, which is huge for any bike. The power figure is going to be 91 horsepower at 4,750 RPM and 110 foot-pounds of torque everywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 RPM. So safe to say it's going to be a pretty snappy motorcycle. It will be equally heavy because it's a big bike. We don't have a figure on what the curb weight will be, but we can rest assured that it's not going to be light. That being said, the motor itself is surprisingly fairly lightweight thanks to using a lot of aluminum. The whole engine weighs in at only 244 pounds, and a part of that is because it's a simple, old-school, air-cooled design, which is great because air-cooled BMW motorcycles of the past are some of the most reliable bikes that have ever been made. I've heard stories of them going over 100,000 miles, which is uncommon with motorcycles, and they still run really well even at that high of mileage. And that's been my experience with them as well, because I've ridden an older BMW R65, which was also an air-cooled Boxer, and that's maybe the only vintage motorcycle I've ever ridden that actually felt like a brand new bike. It worked perfectly. And that's the great thing about investing in a vehicle that's as well engineered as this, and you can tell that this thing is well engineered when you hear that it's got a crankshaft and connecting rods that are forged from hardened and tempered steel. It's got an extra main bearing in the center, and it's kind of a modern take on the classic overhead valve design. So it's going to be 4 valves per cylinder, dual ignition, and manifold injection. So the entire design of the motor is a great combination between the new and the old. It's not overcomplicated, but it's clearly pretty well thought out. Now, because it's a cruiser bike, it's going to have an extra big flywheel so that it's smooth. It's going to have a 6-speed constant mesh transmission and even an optional reverse gear, again, because I think it's going to be a pretty heavy motorcycle. The R18 will feature a single disc dry clutch with something called anti-hopping, so that if you downshift aggressively, you'll be less likely to lock up that back tire. And to slow all of that mass down, the R18 will have twin 300mm discs up front and one in back with 4-pot calipers. And like a lot of cruiser bikes, the brake on the handlebar will apply braking to both the front and the rear, whereas your foot brake is only going to apply braking to the rear. The R18 is going to have 3 engine modes for its Big Boxer, and those are going to be rain, roll, and rock. Rain is going to reduce your throttle response so that you don't have any slippage if you don't intend to. Roll is going to give you your maximum throttle response, but it'll make sure that the automatic stability control steps in if it senses too much slipping. And the rock mode is going to give you full throttle response with less of that automatic stability control. The auto stability control will also be something that you can switch off if you do want it to slip. As I mentioned, the R18 will also have a factory optional reverse assist, and it'll even have a hill start control. Beyond that, you can also option it with adaptive lighting so that you can see better when you're leaning the bike through a turn. You can also option it with keyless ride so that you can leave the key in your pocket, just press a button on the handlebar and go without having to mess with your keys at all. And you can of course get heated grips, which is something that I've never used, but I'm sure it's nice. The great thing is that the R18 is not too technical for its own good because you don't have to option it with a lot of these new features. So if that's something that you want, it's available. But standard, the bike is going to be genuinely very old school and very simple. And they've designed it specifically so that it will be easy to work on because they're also going to launch an entire line of customized parts. And they've worked with companies such as Roland Sands Design, Vance & Hines, and Mustang Seats so that from the factory you'll be able to get a lot of different parts to customize the bike. So if you don't like anything about the way that it looks, you can change that. Getting right into the styling, I want to start with a kind of weird feature, but it's something that appeals to me a lot. And it's the fact that the R18 has a nickel-plated drive shaft with an exposed U-joint by the rear wheel. And watching that U-joint spin around while the bike is on the move is going to be one of the coolest things about it. Besides that, it's got just very classic BMW motorcycle styling. It has what they call a pear drop shaped tank, something that harks back to a lot of the older BMW motorcycles like the R5. It's also going to have sleeves over the forks, which is very classic, and even the shape of the frame is going to be very old school. You can see that the entire motorcycle kind of sits in between the wheels rather than on top of it, which is another feature of vintage bikes that I think gives it a great stance and makes it look different from all the other motorcycles that you see out on the road. Another feature that I like is the fact that the swing arm attaches on both sides. I appreciate the symmetry of that and the fact that it's also old school. The body panels on this R18 are going to be made out of sheet metal, and that includes the surround for the speedometer, the fork sleeves. None of that is going to be plastic, which is fitting to this style of bike because you wouldn't want your old school motorcycle to be made out of composite materials. It just wouldn't feel right. There's also an emphasis on simplicity and minimalism, which I appreciate because I do think that a lot of modern motorcycles are overstyled. But it's not without character because there's cool elements all over the place, including a really nice script at the bottom of the Speedo that says Berlin built. Little touches like that go a long way, and the Speedo itself is pretty retro looking, but it's got nice modern features like LED backlighting. It's a great combination overall with the new school and the old school. When the R18 launches, there will also be a first edition of the bike, which is going to be offered in black with white pinstriping. It'll have some extra chrome, some extra badging, and buyers of the first edition will also get a box of goodies. That'll include a book about the history of BMW Motorrad, a belt with a clasp that says R18 First Edition, assembly gloves, an assembly screwdriver, and plenty more. Pricing on this motorcycle is going to start with a base of $17,495, with the first edition coming in at $19,870, and both of those will include a $695 destination charge. But safe to say there's going to be plenty of options on these bikes, and it should be pretty easy to add up options to the point that it will be a whole lot more than 20 grand. As for how the R18 is to ride, I can't comment because I haven't even had the chance to see the bike in person. I'm hoping that we can get one here because I want to get my hands on it pretty bad. But what I will say about BMWs in general is that they are nice to ride. I spend a lot of time around hairy motorcycles that shake a bunch and they shout, and that's fun, but there's something to be said for the BMW bikes because they just work, they're smooth, they're pleasant, which is unusual with a lot of other motorcycles. And you get the sense that there's a whole lot going on with them mechanically. They're kind of like sophisticated clock mechanisms, but they work incredibly well, they're very reliable, and they're easy to ride. But that's all for this bike. Let us know in the comments what modifications you would like to make to this motorcycle and what parts you would like to see available from the factory, because there should be a lot of different options to make this bike look different and hopefully make it look even more like the concept. And make sure to keep up with us over the next couple weeks on TFL Car, TFL Truck, and TFL Off-Road, because we're still going to be uploading consistently. Thanks for watching and stay safe.